People a sign-in sheet. So if you have not in the past signed in and given us your email, but you would like to get information from our chapter about upcoming events and our public forums and that type of thing, we invite you to put your name and your email address on the form that's over there, and we'll get you on our list, and then we'll be able to keep you apprised of the types of events and the things that we're doing, our public forums, etc. Am I forgetting anything? I asked my fellow board members. I think I've hit everything. All right, so without further ado then, we're going to begin the introductions of these folks who are up here. So as I mentioned, this is our recovery panel, and rather than introducing each of them, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves to you. I've asked them, I basically said the very first question I'm going to ask you is going to be the hardest one, because I'm going to ask you to sort of give a brief summary of, your experience and, what your drug of choice is, and, how long you've been battling with addiction, how long you've been in recovery, what type of tools maybe you used, including medication-assisted treatment that might have supported your recovery, and do that all in 5 minutes. And then I said to them, but don't freak out about that or get too worried about it, because the extent that you don't fill in everything you want to, questions from me and questions from the audience will basically pull information out of you that everyone needs to know. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic, although you have a mic right there, to Christina.
Yay! Thank God.
We have faith in you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Chris. I have been.
How we move the mic closer,
mic.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Chris. I've been in recovery from heroin since 5 years. He counts for me, I don't count. So actually, it would be New Year's Day, 2014. So it's kind of easy to remember. I always forget. So heroin for about a decade, and it sort of happened after my dad died. I was kind of a goody little two-shoes till then. But heroin was there, and I didn't care if I lived or died. And so that's what I did. I just did whatever, and it ended up taking about a decade until I even tried to stop. I never did try. I ended up getting arrested and thrown in jail and having my kids taken away. But I got out of jail and I got my life together. Ended up in Plymouth at the Lighthouse. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it. And they sort of have the meeting requirements at treatment centers. And so I started going to them. I never knew anything about recovery, no nothing. I never tried to quit. And I went to all the NA, the AA, Celebrate Recovery for about 2.5, 3 weeks. And I walked into my counselor's office and I said, listen, I'm a Marine who was raised by Marines. The words powerless and surrender are never going to be a part of my vocabulary, so we got to figure something else out, because this ain't working for me. And he laughed at me, sort of giggling. He said I need to be the one to start some shit, pardon my language. But then he did something that nobody else had done for me ever up until that point. He Googled alternatives to 12-step programs. And the following Saturday, I landed at a Smart Recovery meeting, and that opened the whole world for me. This was here, this amazing thing that clicked so well with my brain. What else was there? And I began to learn more and research and study and learn about all these different things. So I can't really attest one specific thing to my recovery because I take so much from everywhere. But I did find a home with Smart Recovery because it just works with the way my brain works. And there's very little that I don't agree with about it. It's what I've been doing ever since. I became a meeting facilitator. I started meetings in Plymouth. I helped Caitlin start one in Flint. I've done talks at Oakdale. I worked as a peer recovery coach with Engage, some guys back there, for a bit, until really recently. And I do as much advocacy work as my current life allows, because people need to know that there are options and that no one way works for everybody.
My name is Joseph. Would it be helpful if you hold the microphone? with you?
Sorry, I talk kind of.
That's okay.
But I struggle with addiction on and off for 25 years. I'm 39. I used to blame that on my family structure. You know, I didn't have a good upbringing, this and that, but it is what it is. I've been to inpatient treatment 17 times. I've been incarcerated 8 times. And we were arrested together in 2013. I did everything I could to mess my probation up. And finally, I had an understanding judge, Judge Potts in Oakland County Circuit Court, told me pretty much, you know, you're going to do about 3 to 5 years, or you're going to be assigned to adult treatment court. And again, you know, I took the adult treatment court, did every single thing I could to mess it up. And finally, one day it clicked. You know, they sat me down and told me that, you know, at that point I had 3 felonies, 13 misdemeanors. They didn't understand why I had never been to prison. You know, they didn't understand how I kept getting lucky with judges like these individuals. So I got it together. You know, I stayed clean for over 2 years. Recently, last fall, I did relapse. Having the wife that I do and her friends and things, it didn't last long. You know, you're not pulling anything over on them. And I was, where did I go? QBH. I went to QBH for detox. And I got back on Suboxone maintenance. I've been doing okay with that. I struggle with it mentally. We've talked about that before. But other than that, life is pretty good, and I have a really good support system. So.
It's okay, we're coming closer.
Deep down,
With no bad intent for the first time.
okay. Of course, but then I'm gonna wanna ask questions. Wait, hold that, I think it might work though now.
Okay.
Thank
you.
You guys are right. This makes more sense.
I'll start with dating in space. Hi, community. My name's Samantha Garbucci, and I'm an alcoholic that was raised by an alcoholic that was raised by an alcoholic, so I'm a 3rd generation. First time I drank alcohol, I was 12 years old. Sorry, I'm gonna learn how to work this. And I drank until I blacked out at 12, and I didn't know what alcoholism was. I'd never heard the word. My relationship with alcohol is different than what I see other people have with alcohol. So, how long did I struggle? From the time I was 12 to the time I was 36. I had a very long-term drinking career. I don't have a story with law enforcement. I have a story with the gift of desperation, I'm going to call it. The fact that slowly over the years, I determined that I could not handle life the way I saw other people handling life. It took me a very long time to understand that alcohol was my problem. So I did go into a 12-step group. And I guess I want to put some disclaimers out there. I'm a master level clinical social worker, so I work with folks that have dual diagnosis, but I'm not representing, I'm a proud member of the National Association of Social Workers, but I'm not representing them today. I work at Women's Huron Valley Prison for Michigan Department of Corrections, however, I'm not representing them either today. My home in recovery is the 12-step group of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'm not representing them either today. And the reason why I say that is because that would go against one of our traditions. We're an anonymous group, and so we don't promote our own. So I'm sharing with you my personal story of recovery and what worked for me. I called my father in the last blackout drinking episode I had. He was one of my drinking buddies, and he said, why don't you open the phone book and call Alcoholics Anonymous? I had come out of a blackout with his shotgun in my hand, and I had one moment of clarity that I was looking around to see where can I end this where nobody finds me. And then I had a moment of clarity, and I called the only person left in my life that I would have listened to for half a second. And then I have what I call a spiritual experience, because my dad didn't know anything about Alcoholics Anonymous, right? So I called and I went, and I had to pull over a couple of times. You know, it's hard to drive. But I went there and I met people that didn't want to kick me out of the room. They welcomed me into the room. They kept hugging me. I was thinking, please stop touching me. I understand why you're touching me, you know. But powerless was an idea that I had to grasp because I had tried to assert my willpower for many, many years. And I couldn't do it that way. And I agree with you. Everybody's brain works differently. So I struggled for about 24 years. I've been sober for, in June, it will be 14 years. And I don't take credit for that. Everyone that's helped me along the way gets credit for that. My sponsors get credit for that. My relationship with God gets credit for that, right? All I did was shoot up and show up. And so when I tell people that, they go, what? But that's my story. So I've never had to relapse. I have a whole lot of compassion because I've worked with many people that have struggled over and over and over again. My message is you don't necessarily have to do that. It's a possibility. It doesn't have to be a probability from my perspective. So that's it. Covered, right?
You guys have your own microphone there. It might sound better.
I could use both.
Yeah.
I don't know, kind of has a weird.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
I'll try to do 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting to say the least. That's what you call it. So I was an assistant principal in Troy School District and found myself having several surgeries due to injuries. Appendicitis is how it started, and then ended up having a mass on my uterus. So a month later, I had hysterectomy, used the pills like everybody else, and then ended up having back surgery after that. Not sure if it was due to the surgeries, but ended up going to pain management clinics, tried epidurals, and that was the first time that those medications were given to me in large doses. The very last time, it was 120 pills a month for a year. And after a year, this all started in 2013, ended after 2017, and I, after a year, called the doctor to get the next script, and they said, oh, it's been a year, you don't need them anymore. And so we all know what happens after that. And so my spiral went down pretty quickly and ended up having an intervention with some friends of mine and went to Maple Grove, was doing well for about 4.5 months, and right before school started, I relapsed again. My body, or my brain, I mean, I know these drugs are addictive, but I didn't know my brain would be the one to get addicted. And ended up going into a home that was not mine, looking for prescription drugs. Been in Troy my entire life, and so when the police officers came to my house to arrest me, I knew all of them, went to jail, knew all of them, know my judge, had her students at my school. It's been a painful, devastating, career-ending process, but what has happened since then with recovery has been amazing, but I had to go through the devastation first. And my job now, and I know, you know, recovery is different for everybody, but the anonymity is what has killed many people. And for me personally, that stigma is what kept me from getting help, because I knew I'd lose my job. I knew a lot of things would happen in my life. One, I'd have to stop using. One, I'd lose my job, which ended up happening anyway. Had to resign from my job 4 days after the incident. 24-year career, very loved, had a very good reputation, loved my students. I'm in the court system still. It's been 9 months, delayed 7 times. when the victim, the police, and 3 prosecuting attorneys all agreed on a misdemeanor. And please, don't get me wrong, I agree with accountability 100%. But I am now charged with a felony. I don't even have a driving ticket, a speeding ticket, nothing. So I have a felony. I was fortunate enough to still get a job, but I went through the process of trying to get a job. I can't get an apartment, I can't vote, I can't leave the state. I mean, I understand that with addiction comes accountability. I'm never against that, we all need that. But at the same time, sticking with someone with a felony, I'm not sure that's doing what they think it's doing. Not being able to go back in education, fine, that's fine. But you know what? I'm educating people anyway. So the stipulations that come with what they thought that felony would be charged with isn't what's gonna happen for me. That particular person doesn't know me, doesn't know my resilience, and doesn't know that I feel like I've been chosen for this, and that on the other end of this, I'm gonna speak out as loudly as I can to help others that are still suffering. And that stigma, I hope someday will go away where people can reach out for help. So what I didn't say real quickly was back when it happened, it hit every local station. Not only was my world already devastated, but it hit Channel 2, 4, 7, Oakland Press, the Detroit News, the New York Times. I mean, seriously, I'm an assistant principal at a school. Do we really need to do that? And so I thought, we went to court a couple weeks ago, and I thought that the media had forgotten about me, but they hadn't. So on Wednesday night, blasted it out again, mugshot. I had to relive the moment over again. Called some of my friends that are here today, helped me through that because my anger bubbled up, and we know that that emotion isn't going to lead me anywhere but bad places. And so when it hit the media again, I was angry this time, super angry. But instead of getting angry, I decided to Facebook post and post it towards WXYZ and WDIV, and friended them on that and let them know that despite what they did, I'm going to use it for good, and thank you for the platform. And I will continue to speak out, and they haven't replied, but maybe they will at some point. But again, I speak out wherever and whenever I can, and it's been a blessing to be on the recovery end of things, done documentaries, and like Christy said, speak out wherever I can. So I'm blessed to have now the support I have. I have real friendships, real friends that I can turn to, and also run a program with Refuge Recovery. I do go to NA, where I can quiet my mind, meditation. So I found recovery, and I'm blessed to be here. Thanks for hearing me.
Oh yeah, hello, I'm Caitlin. Yeah, Refuge Recovery is great. I like that we're speaking about the different programs that are out there, not just AA and NA, because I'm definitely a multiple pathways person. I started drinking and experimenting with booze and weed when I was 12. I was one of those that broke into my parents' liquor cabinet, and my whole teenage years I spent binge drinking and partying. But the first moment where I can pinpoint where everything started was when I got my wisdom teeth out and they prescribed me Vicodin. And I had that moment and I was like, this is how I want to feel for the rest of my life. And so throughout my 20s, whenever I could get pills, I would be a recreational user. I didn't have a actual physical dependence yet, but whenever I could get pills, I would take them. I would steal them from friends when I was at their house, family members. I ordered pills online. I was very clever and crafty. Back in the day, you could still do that stuff with the internet. What became a problem is when my dad died, when I was 29, I went through that same trauma that Christina spoke of, and immediately it was like, well, what is gonna make me feel better? And I went to pills because it numbed me, and that's when I started using heroin because it was cheaper. And so I used heroin for 3 years, and it was my whole physical dependence part of my addiction. Dozens of attempts to quit. I did cold turkey at home, but I I used Suboxone that I bought off the street, but every time I tried at home, I couldn't maintain it because I always had it in my mind that I could still go and get high. So I did 8 inpatient stays in 3 years. State-funded recovery facilities, sorry to say this, are kind of a joke. I view them as a place to dry out. They're all 12-step based, so there's not many options for people that don't believe that they're powerless. I took refuge in the people that I met at those places, Tim being one of them. Tim helped me out. Tim, raise your hand. Tim helped me out so much. I met incredible people, and but I never heard about any alternative programs at any of the places I was at. It took me hearing from a friend who lived in Kalamazoo, who had got sentenced for DUIs and had to go to meetings, and her judge allowed her to go to Smart Recovery meetings. And so I Googled Smart Recovery, and I'm like, what is this amazing thing? Science-based? Oh my goodness. So I wish Christina would have talked a little bit more about Smart Recovery, but it's a program that's it changes when science changes, and it's all about improving in the quality of your life, essentially. You're not powerless, it's a self-empowering program, so yeah. So I've been in long-term recovery since September of 2016. I credit a lot of it to Oakdale, even though I'm talking shit about the state-funded places. There's something about going away for 30 days and having a place to dry out and actually get your rational thought back. It's so hard to do it at home. Oakdale is the first place where I tried Vivitrol, which is medical-assisted treatment. It's an opiate blocker. And it helps with your cravings, so that was the first place I got exposed to that, so there were a lot of good things about being there. So yeah, in September of 2016, I started on Vivitrol, and I was on Vivitrol for 6 months, and I was doing well. I've been attending SMART meetings. I actually started one in Flint because I had a friend overdose and die there that was supposed to be the first Smart Recovery facilitator in Flint. They didn't have anything like that up there. So I got my friend Christina on board, and we started our own meeting, and we drive 142 miles round trip. Every 2 weeks we alternate, and it's been really gratifying to bring it to a place where they don't have it. We have a group that comes that's dual diagnosis. That was another thing about treatment. I learned that I had bipolar, and so I got to start getting treatment for that and getting on medication for that. That helped me a lot. What I do want to speak about, though, is my recent lapse, as I call it. It was 2 months where last fall I started using Norco again recreationally, and it turned into a habit. It started with pain, and I was buying it off the streets. But I knew once it got to a certain point, I was like, oh my God, shit, I'm in this again. I can't believe I let myself get into this again. This happened. This is crazy. How am I here physically dependent on something again? So I went to my doctor, and we talked about it. I've been seeing an addiction doctor since I got off heroin in September of 2016. And we agreed to use Subzolve, and I was on Subzolve for 2 months. I tried Suboxone as well, and I wanted to speak about how those two different medications, they have the same main ingredient, which is buprenorphine, but they affect your body differently. So if you have a loved one who is not succeeding with Suboxone, have them try Subzolve or vice versa, because they work differently in your body. I didn't have success with Suboxone. It made me feel terrible. I was sick. It was not good, but the Subzolve I was able to use. It all came to a crazy point where I had been on this medication called Baclofen for muscle pain. It's a muscle relaxant, and I had been on that for 3 years, and I got the flu, and I got so sick I went into a psychosis because I couldn't take the Baclofen anymore. And so my friend Christina, who is a huge part of my support system, she had to take me to the hospital, and I was in the psych ward, and I didn't know what was going on for 3 weeks, so it took me some time to recover, and that's where I detoxed off the Subzolve safely, and got on better medication for my bipolar, and I've been doing really well ever since. I was one of the lucky ones that didn't get into the system. I was very crafty when the police pulled me over. I was one of those that could talk my way out of stuff. So I thank you judges and people, prosecutors that are here to listen to us, because it's so important to hear stories like yours, especially how sentencing affects people's lives. It's really crazy. So thank you guys.
So I'm going to ask one more question to sort of start things off and then open it up to the audience. I'm anticipating that a lot of you may have a lot of questions. If you don't, I have a bunch prepared, but I think I probably won't need them. I will start sort of with one though. And the one I want to ask you all is, as you're contemplating your addiction and recovery journey, what things do you think were the biggest challenges for you in being able to succeed in recovery, and what are the things that you think are most necessary and helpful to your recovery today?
So the things that were the most challenging for me during my recovery was the system. I was dealing with the legal stuff, and then I also had a pretty brutal CPS case where there were a lot of people fighting me, even though I was 100% compliant the entire time I was involved. What should have been over in a matter of months lasted 3 years. And that was 3 years where my kids were going through torment because of what was happening. Luckily, I had an amazing CPS agent who I'm actually friends with now, which is almost unheard of for natural enemies. I had an amazing probation officer who, when I told her, I can't go to an inpatient place, it's not gonna work, I need to be able to get a job, I gotta be able to handle these things, she listened. And she sent me to an outpatient facility in Plymouth. I had the judge presiding the case, the CPS case, Gregory Racy, up in Oakland County. He did everything he could to stay level-headed and to pay attention and to notice when things were going well. And also, another challenge is when two people are in recovery together and you have struggles when one lapses. It's not something easy because you get torn. Like, I understand, I get it. I want to be compassionate, but you're kind of fucking with my life here, So, and now my kids are home, and now they're going to be affected even more. So I have to take all of that into consideration. I have a whole family to think of, not just one or two of us anymore. So long story short with that, I won the CPS case. My kids are back home with me. I have full custody. They've been out of my life for a while now. It's the single greatest achievement of my life, and even better is that my kids, they've told me more than once, if there had been a you in the courtroom with you, he says, my one son says it never would have lasted that long. Ever. So that kind of is what spurred me into becoming a peer recovery coach and trying to work with people and help people get through it, because it is needed in the courtroom, because too many people just don't get it. They think that they can set you on this hardcore path and they don't listen. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that. Well, that wasn't cutting it for me. It wasn't helping me at all. It was doing nothing but causing me more problems. There was no way I could rebuild anything but everything that they were asking me to do. But now, I'm no longer caught up in the system. Everything is good. I have a great life. I try to get word out about the multiple pathways as much as possible, focusing on SMART. Sorry, I didn't mention it enough before.
You should explain it a little.
But yes, it is that is probably, there's so many amazing tools in SMART that it's not so much that I learned, but more that I remembered that I had, because until I was already adult before I became addicted to anything, I was functioning, I had life skills, I had a good job, I was well-rounded, and I never got in any trouble with anything. So for me to go from 10 years of heroin addiction to just being normal again wasn't too much of a stretch for me. And that was one of the things that I really liked about SMART was that my brain already did all these things. I just had to remember it. And it made it tangible for me to be able to see, like, oh yes, I understand this. This makes sense because I already do this. What else did you want to know?
I think that's it.
Oh, okay, all right.
And by the way, in case it's been lost on anybody,
It's turned off.
how did that happen?
They turned it off.
I don't think so. Anyway, these two are married is all I wanted to say.
Oh.
Yeah, Joe, you guys probably figured that out at this point, so, go ahead, Joe.
So the question was like, what is my
Basically, what were the things that were the biggest challenges and what are the things that you think are most important to supporting recovery?
Okay, so my biggest challenge as far as using is, and everything I'm about to tell you is a bullshit excuse. I know that now. But it's all I know. That is all I know. I know how to wake up in the morning, homeless, broke, with no phone, no telephone, and I promise you by noon, in any city in America, I will have heroin. That's what I know. I will break the law. I'll do whatever I have to do. I have this, when it comes to getting drugs, I have an unbelievable motivation. You know, determination. You will not stop me. There's no cop, lawyer, judge, prosecutor that can threaten me. What are you going to do to me? I'm homeless. You're going to give me three hots and a cot? So I had that mentality for so long that I was the kind of criminal that every time I got arrested, I would thank the police. I would thank the judge. You know, you're going to do 6 months. I'd be like, sweet. I don't got to think. It's sad, but I don't got to think. You're going to do my thinking for me. You're going to do my laundry. You're going to attempt to feed me, whatever. But and the problem is, I became comfortable in that. I am more comfortable, even now clean. I'm more comfortable being miserable, seeing what it did to my family, seeing what it does to my kids, seeing the impact I have on my community. You know, even my neighbors. I didn't care. It was irrelevant. I was going to get high, and if you couldn't help me, then get out of my way. And, you know, I was just irresponsible, unaccountable. Those are two of the biggest words I learned in adult treatment court in Oakland County. Be accountable, be responsible. And I didn't want to do that because once you go from being miserable, and then you become accountable and responsible, and now you know you can do it. And once you know you can do it, now I can't go back to being the homeless drug addict because it doesn't feel the same anymore. So Oakland County Circuit Court ruined that dream I had. You know? They took it all away because look at me, I can work. I can hold down a job. I can be a father. I can, you know, try to repair my marriage. I can do all of these great things, and like, now I feel bad if I'm lazy. So the greatest things that keep me you know, wanting to stay clean. Number one, you know, I want to be a good dad for the kids. I didn't have that, and that's not an excuse. My father didn't have a template. He didn't know what to do. So neither did I, you know. And I want to be clean. And I had some amazing people in the system, the legal system, that I still talk to. I still call my probation officer every week and tell her I'm alive, tell her I'm clean, tell her what I'm doing. You know, like I said, Chris is a SMART recovery facilitator, Caitlin. I have a lot of friends now that, you know, they're responsible people, and I'm kind of getting the hang of it. I still kind of want to go back to that park bench and just be, you know, when I wake up in the morning, I don't want to go to work, but I do, you know what I'm saying? So that was to answer the question, I guess, that was my biggest hurdle. I was comfortable being miserable because that's easy. That's the easy way out. And, you know, now today, I think I owe the community something. I went to treatment 17 times and never paid $1. And I'm not just talking about like that, but I owe people. I can help people. There's people in this room who have lost children. That was very humbling when you opened up with that, you know. That could have been me, you know. So I think if I can do anything in the world to get back to just save 1 kid, 2 kids, maybe we can save 1,000. These people don't have to be here. So I guess I just want to stay clean long enough to get some kind of sense of, you know, focused direction and maybe get back a little bit, because I have admittedly taken a lot from the community around me.
I think one of the biggest biggest challenges for me with my alcoholism was that I learned very early on to perform well. Right? So nobody in my family knew I was an alcoholic. Nobody I worked, maybe a couple of people I worked with might have known because they would go out with me, right? But I performed really well. So I didn't have legal problems. I didn't have housing problems. I always had a roof over my head. You know, I did get one DUI back in the 90s. And I wasn't that good. I didn't talk my way out of it because they made me blow. But maybe if they hadn't made me blow, I could have talked my way out of it. But what I did do was back then, they made you go talk to this person in the state. And he was going to do an assessment for you. So I went down in a different county. I wasn't in Wayne County, I was in Macomb. So I meet with this man, and he asks me these questions, and I answer them, and I don't tell him the truth about one darn thing he asked. I lied about absolutely everything, right? Because I've been living a dual life for a really long time, so I got, I got it down pat. So he gave me this letter, and it said, this ticket appears to be an isolated incident. This person doesn't appear to have a problem with alcohol. Do you know how long I carried that letter around with me? I never got another DUI because I just stopped driving. This is how my alcoholic brain works. Oh, I got in trouble, I had to pay money, I had to go see Death on the Highway, so I'll just stop driving my car, right? But man, did I tell a lot of people about that letter. Look, this guy does this for a living for the state, if anybody knows, he knows, right? Biggest challenge to recovery for me was getting honest and getting real. And trying to learn how to be comfortable in my own skin. 13 years ago, if you would have said, you're going to be at the summit talking to it, I would have been like, no, I'm not. Getting comfortable in my own skin. Recovery has given me the ability to do that. I don't have to present a false self to you anymore. This is me. This is it, right? I do the best that I can do. And the three biggest things that maintain my recovery for me. I agree with what everybody said about the humbling, listening to the parents, looking at the judges in this room. Before recovery, I would have never thought anybody in the community would come to a meeting like this and care about people like us, because I couldn't separate that what I had was a disease from the idea that I was morally and spiritually bankrupt. To me, it was a moral failing. And so I had to divorce that whole idea of I'm bad getting good, right? To I have a disease and it's very unhealthy, and I've watched my mother and my grandmother both die of it, and I want to get well. And I want to stay well, right? So what helped me maintain my recovery is I get up every morning, for me, and I thank God for another sober day. And whenever there's an opportunity to help in any kind of way, I very much agree with this panel. We're humbled that you care. And I feel the same way, every time I got into my car, every time I wasted somebody's time, every time I wasn't available to help, somebody helped me along the way. And so whenever anybody reaches out their hand in any capacity, whether it be in my group or another group or your group, and I can help, then I'm required, I'm responsible, right? And that and my relationship with God. I knew God way before I ever got into recovery, but I have had plain, regular, everyday spiritual experiences in the last 13 years that have forever changed the way I look at you, me, and our Creator in the world. So that really helps maintain my recovery.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious what my challenges were. I didn't really have a chance to recover in private. to have people call and say, hey, we saw your mugshot on TV, or, many people called because they cared, but a lot of people just called to be nosy and wondered what had happened. But that was one challenge, but another challenge I'd like to just talk about real quick is that when we're sent to recovery places or treatment centers, they sent me as far away as possible because of the media. They called it a high profile, which I don't understand, but so I went all the way out to California to do treatment, and many times families, my siblings, when you return, you're healed. And like the work, I was just basically kicked out of that bubble, that safe and secure place that everybody understood you and you didn't have to explain yourself, and it was an amazing place, healing place, and then you're kicked out back into society and you're all good now. My parents, so you're not an addict anymore. You got the help you needed, and that's true, I got the help I needed, but I will always struggle my entire life, every day. And in order to maintain sobriety, you have to have some sort of program, some sort of foundation, and the work began when I came home, and it continues each day. And the first time that I relapsed, I didn't have that. I also thought that if I just stopped using, I would be okay. And I found out very quickly that that's not how this works. So that was my biggest challenge, and probably will be my whole life until I die. And that's just the way it is. And until you come to terms with that, it can be very difficult and a challenge.
Oh my gosh, you guys all had such great things to say about challenges. I can relate to all of that. I think for me, being an only child, my biggest challenge was my mindset. I was so self-entitled, but I also had no self-worth. So it took me all these tries and all this research and development with each different relapse and each different try at sobriety, learning something new each time, thinking about things a different way and growing. My biggest challenge also became my strength, is that I learned that I do have self-worth and that I do have a support system, and there are people that care about me. Chris Odrowski, who's here, Christina and Joe, you guys are a huge part of my life. And when I was using, I didn't believe that there were people out there like that could care about me. So learning and having a support system and reaching out and not feeling like such an isolated only child anymore is really what helps me with my recovery. And spreading the positivity, starting a meeting in Flint has been so great, because it's been not just giving back to all these people and putting out a program that I love and that has helped me so much, but it's accountability for me. I have to be there for them. If I'm not there some week, it's not fair to these people, and I'm definitely one of those people that always wanted to get out of things, and I'm very bad at sticking to a routine, so having this accountability for me has been really amazing. So, yeah.
Thank you all, and is this working?
Yes.
So now it's your turn. Does anyone have some questions for any one or more, or maybe our whole panel?
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you to all of you for being here. My one question is, the theme from all of you that I got was that your personalities somehow had allowed you to be addictive. I mean, all of us in this room, I'm sure at one time or another have had to take some type of pain medication for something, or had a drink or two. So what is it that you think you have that caused you to become so addictive that you couldn't just take a pill to get through the pain, or that the doctors just kept giving you pain meds, not asking or trying to find out why it wasn't working or why you continue to need them? I mean, even
the judge that was here at the last meeting, or 2 meetings ago, she said, it's like, you know, these doctors, they don't look and see that there's something addictive in your personality, in your DNA or something that is triggering your continued need for this. And I think if we could find some way to have some type of testing done before they start giving you pills, or, you know, you're drinking, or whatever the form is that's addictive, you could not have to go through this. I mean, listening to you all, my heart goes out to you, what you have gone through. And all of you have shown such strength and perseverance. I just applaud you. And thank you for being here.
Anyone want to comment on that? There we go.
So I follow a lot of articles on
Okay,
Facebook and
Turn it off.
turn it off. Turn it on.
On the side.
So I read a lot of science articles and recovery articles, and there's this huge debate whether we're born with this disease of addiction, whether it's actually a disease, whether it's not. But I think the one underlying factor I see in most people, and I could be wrong, is low self-esteem. You know, low self-esteem. Most addicts or alcoholics have some form of mental issues. And you know, for me, I'll speak for myself. That's all I thought I was worth, was a dime bag of heroin, or waking up drunk in an alley. You know, it numbed the pain. It filled this hole that I had that I didn't understand why I have, and I still don't understand today. And I think, you know, what you're talking about is how can doctors screen for this? You know, how can we check people when, like the lady next to me said, we are absolutely amazing liars.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I'm not saying that to be funny. I can convince you of some amazing things, including the fact that I really need, you know, 300 Oxy-80s a month because I stubbed my toe. I'll convince you of this. So I think the issue becomes, it breaks down to an individual level. I don't think there's a magic cure. I don't think there's a way to screen the general population. You know, and it's like all the parents in this room, and they're like, well, why does this kid get it and my kid just doesn't get it? Because he just doesn't get it. You understand? You can go to jail as many times as you want. You can put these kids in treatment. You can do everything you want to do as a parent, except blame yourself. Because the addict is not going to get clean. This lady was not going to quit drinking until she decided to quit drinking. So there's really no answer, as far as I'm concerned, like one solution to your question. You know what I mean? So.
I went to a great training last month at the Forensic Center, and if I was not as old as I am, I would go back to school for neurobiology, and he was talking about these super highways that in an alcoholic or an addict's brain, when we use or when we drink, these super highways are created. And so this idea of craving that we experience that you don't, right? It's so hard to describe our disease to normies because you've never experienced the obsession of your mind and the craving in your body, that internal motivation and drive to go get it. Whatever it takes, you know, I'd walk through snowstorm, ridiculous behavior, right? And it's hard to explain. I know that there's a genetic predisposition, but he's right. It's like roulette. You don't know which person will get it and which person doesn't. I've met people that grew up in wonderful families where they had no active addiction around them, and they're, you know, they're an alcoholic or they're an addict, or vice versa, right? And doctors and all the professionals in the world, like I refuse to go to a treatment center, which is why it's not part of my story. You know, I didn't trust those people. I certainly wasn't going to tell them the truth about my experience, right? And so they can't help you if you don't tell them the truth. So I think a big burden gets put on the medical community. In reality, nobody, you know, do you drink socially? Well, yes, I might drink once or twice. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So we put a lot of pressure on. It is a personal journey. Like he said, you know, once you can recognize it and then start telling the truth and then getting help wherever it works, whether it's Smart Recovery or treatment centers or 12-step programs, and, you know, but you gotta be honest about what you're dealing with. So, I mean, the onus and the responsibility is on me to take care. If I have diabetes, the onus and the responsibility to manage my diabetes falls on me, right? So.
And I'm certainly not a doctor, but what I would say is, I agree with Joseph as well, where mental illnesses seem to go hand in hand with addiction. For me, anxiety, depression runs in my family heavily.
Use the other mic, because those two mics next to each other are making, sorry.
Yeah, so I think they go hand in hand. And also, through therapy, I realized too that, you know, I spent a lifetime of service to my students, to parents, to teachers that I was an administrator to. I spent a lot of time caring about other people and didn't take the time to care for myself. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I mean, I just didn't. I was a workaholic. And so that was my addiction. I also have a genetic component as well. My half-sister died of an overdose, and 4 out of my 5 siblings have addiction issues. But I think the pill, what it offered me when I took it was, I related that feeling to someone taking care of me, because it was due to surgeries. And so when I actually took it, it was, people cared about me, I didn't have to ask. And so I tried to relive that by taking the medication again and again and again. And I got that warm feeling without even having anybody care for me. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but yeah. No comment.
Okay, so to play on how different people are, it's not necessarily a personality trait. I don't have any diagnosed mental illnesses. I became addicted to heroin because I chose to. I literally said to him, because he would say, "You don't understand what it's like," and I said, "Watch me figure out what it's like. I'm going to show you that I understand. You're not going to tell me that I don't get it." I walked into it eyes wide open, knowing what could happen. I guess that in and of itself would be a mental illness. I call that the 20-something, you can't tell me anything. I grew out of that. Sorry. It's just like you guys have been saying, there's so many factors, it's so multifaceted, you can't pinpoint it. You can't. I mean, for me, one of the reasons why I made the choice was because I was hurting, I was grieving, nothing more. I lost the only stable person in my life, and I was just done. I didn't care at that point. Nobody cared about me anymore, because the only person that did was dead. He was getting high. So I really had nothing else going for me at the time. So why not get high with the only person who still even knows I exist? So, but that kind of thing also plays a part in recovery. That's what so many people need to understand. People struggling with mental illnesses, they're going to have a much harder time than someone like me who doesn't have a mental illness. I'm just an everyday basic bitch. So, I can wake up and recognize a rational thought versus an irrational thought at any given time. I can go about my day and not have to deal with extreme anxiety. Not to call anybody out, but I was fielding messages from both Caitlin and Joe for a good part of the day, talking about how anxious and nervous they were just to be here.
You guys are doing an amazing job.
Paranoia can't. It's a very real thing, and you know, this is something that is anxiety inducing for even a normal person, but this is something that these guys struggle with daily over things that you wouldn't even think to get anxious about. Oh my gosh, there's a spot on the mirror. Could trigger anxiety. Big time. But it's very real, and you throw in things like bipolar disorder, depression, schizophrenia. These are things that a lot of people deal with, a lot of the times undiagnosed. Nobody knows they have it. And that's probably the only reason that they're using, because that's the only thing they know how to do to deal with what's going on in their head. So many things have to be looked at when you're dealing with someone who's going through addiction, because it's not just the one thing. There's so much more to it.
Thank you.
Just one more point to that. I was thinking while you were talking about, it also works on from what I understand, the pleasure center of your brain. And so, someone used an analogy once that we could be standing in the middle of Disney World and not feel any pleasure, eventually, because nothing is pleasurable anymore. And so we're constantly chasing that pleasure, and eventually it just doesn't happen anymore.
I think it's pretty uniformly recognized that there is a genetic component that exists with respect to addiction. But I just want to share, because it's made a profound impact on me some years ago, there's a doctor who practices in Vancouver, or did, he may be retired now, dealing for years and years with treating an addict population, almost in a harm reduction approach, not necessarily from a treatment perspective. His name was Gabor Mate. I don't know if you guys have heard of him.
He's awesome.
Yeah, so he wrote a book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, and the quote that has been attributed to him, I'm going to butcher it, but it sticks in my head, is that people who are dealing with or seeking to treat or help addicted people shouldn't be asking why the addiction, instead they should be asking why the pain.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the name of that book again?
In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And Gabor Mate, M-A-T-E.
Everything he writes.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not only that.
Okay.
So what gives you hope today?
It gives me hope.
Yeah, what gives you hope today?
What gives me hope is everything. Everything. I don't think I've ever been without hope. I mean, I have this thing right here causing a ruckus. They're my ride or dies right there. That girl could run a smart meeting. She could facilitate one. She lives with me everywhere. She doesn't want to. I have an amazing husband who, when he's clean and doing well, he's doing really well. I have the best support system ever. I have some of the coolest people in my little circle of people. I got Caitlin, I got Joe, I got the Devil Elvis. Devil Elvis, yeah. And just, I guess the better question for me is, what don't I have to get me home? I don't know a day without it at this point.
What gives me hope is it's gonna sound selfish because it is. I'm not a religious person. I don't. If that's your thing, great, I support it. But I believe in karma, and at this point in my life, I'm getting older, and like I spoke about earlier, taking people to community, I've caused a lot of damage. I really have. There are things I don't even speak of, and so what I hope for is to become a good enough person to maybe balance some of that out. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be, leave a great mark on the earth. I just kind of want to leave with, break even. I really hope that I can do something to give back. And I don't see what that is yet at this point. I'm too lazy to become a facilitator for some recovery. I don't have the wherewithal to run an AA meeting. I miss 10 out of 10 times. And so my hope is that I can figure out a way to get back.
Well, you're doing it now.
There you go.
What gives me hope? I am a spiritual person, so my daily relationship, my Creator gives me hope. It's a pretty humbling experience to experience recovery, to be at such a hopeless spot in your life where you just can't see any way to get out. And then you have a prayer of surrender, and all of a sudden just all these things start happening over time that help you create a life that you never dreamt of. Pretty humbling experience, right? Certainly nothing that I deserve, right? I also am married to a person that I met early on in recovery. They have some rules about that. I broke them. And take care of a plant? I'm not taking care of a plant. I have no desire. to take care of, well, now I do, but then I didn't. But we have a very spiritual marriage. We're both in recovery. You know, our house, this is our triangle in our house. It's God, recovery, each other. And it's a formula that works, right? So he just celebrated 14 years in April. And it gives you so much, these two will agree, it gives you so much opportunity to work on being in a relationship, right? So that's good, that gives me hope. I have a home now, I don't have a dwelling I live in, big difference, you know? I feel connected. Even though I haven't met some of you people, as a community, I feel connected to you. That gives me hope. That was never the case before, right? I got a great career because I went back to school and got a few degrees, and now I get to reach out and help women that other people think are throwaway, and that is such a gift. Every day I get to go to work and do that, right? Every day. Amazing, gives me hope. And I have a whole lot of gratitude because I was taught early on, you better have every day starts with gratitude. What are you grateful for? You know, because my using self would complain about all of the things that I didn't have, right? That was my mindset, that was my perspective. And I spent a whole lot of time, energy, and focus on manipulating the world around me to get what I want. And that built up a lot of guilt, remorse, and shame, right? And then I'm right back in the moral, I'm an immoral and spiritual bag of a person, right? So I don't have to live like that anymore, so that gives me hope.
I would say what gives me hope, I'm almost 10 months clean, so I'm pretty early on. So just recently, I'd say in the last month, I can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel where I couldn't see it before. Been in a dark place for a really long time. And I feel like people in my recovery community have taken a chance on me. And even though I'm early on, I've gotten a job already, despite my felony. Millbrook Counseling hired me. Yes, amazing place, love that place. The owners and I met through recovery, and I love them, and I love that they, you know, took a chance on me. So, and I hope in my recovery too that I can help others that are still struggling, because that is my ultimate goal from the very, very beginning. I don't want anyone to have to go through what I did.
Oh my gosh, mine's gonna sound so selfish and weird, but I'm gonna start this off with I'm kind of a hedonist still. I'm driven by pleasure seeking, and I still am that type of person. So I look in other areas now. I find hope in music. I find hope in connection with people, connection to my community, helping people. I've had to think about this a lot actually in the last week because my friend just committed suicide, and I was thinking, like, what do I have to live for? And for me, it's just the possibility of each given day. Like, what can I do with this day? What's gonna happen today that's gonna make me happy? It's not always a good day, you know. It was a hard week after this happened, but there's always the possibility of something good. That's how I feel. So, thank you.
We have time for a couple more questions.
One time I was invited to a meeting of AA chapters, and it was a very interesting experience for me as a judge. At each table, it was a luncheon, and at each table there was a person in recovery that participated in AA, and they asked me how I handled drunk drivers when they come in front of me. That's one of the most serious crimes that comes to a district court like mine is drunk driving. Some judges throughout the state believe in jail, even for first-time offenders. And you know that a certain percentage of people that come through for drunk driving are alcoholics. You don't necessarily know which ones.
But the people, they really surprised me. I told them that my philosophy was not jail. I didn't put people in jail on a first offense. I would on a probation violation, but not just as a matter of course as part of the sentence. They told me that what really woke them up was jail. They had multiple DUIs. I guess I want to know your opinion on that. What should judges do? I know you can't have one size fits all. It shouldn't be that way. But we want to do what's going to be most effective. And I try to get through to people. Sometimes you look at them and you know you're not getting through to them. They're lying to you. You're asking them if they have a problem with alcohol. You see that they've got a minor in possession, an open intoxicant in motor vehicle, on their driving record, you know, on their criminal history, drunk in the park, and now they've got a DUI. And I say, do you have a problem with alcohol? No. How do you get through to somebody like that?
I don't think you're gonna like the answer, Judge Matt. You can't. For family members too, right? All the Al-Anons in the front row know this. Nobody else can, right? And I can say from my personal experience in the other county, going to jail didn't help me get clean or sober. I drank for many years after that. So that, in my mind, is an ineffective approach. However, the heartbreaking thing is, unless someone has a moment of clarity or a big event happen to where they decide, I need help, right? Then probably recovery is not gonna happen, because in between all of that, the steps that you take for recovery, you know, my old timers used to tell me, hey, don't worry, the only thing you have to change is everything. If you think it's a good idea, do the opposite, right? And so there's a lot of behavior change that comes into recovery, and if you have a person that still wants to go use or still wants to go drink, they are not gonna do the work required, and nobody in their life can make them. I mean, it's sad, but it's true.
Oh, sure. I don't know, for the prosecutors and judges in the room, I don't know how you do your job. Because on one hand, you know, you got a guy in your courtroom on his third DUI. Are you supposed to let him go so he can get drunk that night and go, you know, end someone's life? Are you supposed to give him 10 years? I don't know how you guys do it. I could not do your job. Not with any form of compassion. And it's a really tricky question. I guess I would say take it on a case-by-case basis. Like you just said, you look at the record. Well, you know, they've got open intox and they've been 3 or 4. It's time. And I'm not talking. You know, I don't want to see anybody go to jail. I don't like jail. But a few times it saved my life. You know, and I think at the end of the day, you're elected to protect the community. So I wouldn't go home feeling guilty at night for sending someone to jail for a crime that they committed. But at the same time, you know, you have to have some kind of compassion. I think what would make the judges and prosecutors' lives easier is if there were more alternatives for you guys. Because right now your alternatives are pretty much let them go back on the street and keep doing what they're doing, or send them to jail. Well, why can't we meet in the middle? Why isn't there more treatment? Why is it, you know, it costs less money to put someone in treatment than jail. I know that for a fact. And, you know, I think you guys need more alternatives. There's a lot of drug courts and sobriety courts that are working. But at the end of the day, I mean, you know, like she said, there's no way to get through people. Like I said, I was incarcerated 8 times. It didn't mean anything. Nothing. It meant absolutely nothing to me. So I think just do your job the best you can. Protect the community. That's number one. There's people out here dying. All right, because some kid wants to go drink 25 beers and go 100 miles an hour on the road. People are dying. So I think protect life would be the only thing I would consider if I were you.
I don't know that I really have anything too constructive to say, but I will add that although I don't think jail was my rock bottom or my wake-up call, I knew it was time to stop. Jail gave me enough time to dry out, to detox, and to get my head a little bit clearer, and it fattened me up. I ate a lot. I went on jail food. I was in the Marine Corps. Jail food was a step up. But it gave me the time to distance myself and to really decide what I wanted to do, because when I walked out of Oakland County Jail, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Oakland County, it's right on Telegraph, I had a choice. I could walk south to the dope man's house that I saw outside my cell window every day, all day, or I could walk north to the Speedway and get a cup of coffee. Well, given that my coffee withdrawals in jail were worse than my heroin withdrawals, I went and got the coffee. But if it's ever a matter of if you're overseeing probation or things like that, that is where the most help could be had. For real, it's after treatment, it's after jail, because people have immediate needs that they have to take care of before they can get into a lot of that mental stuff. You know, you're in survival mode. I walked out of jail with, I didn't even have a bra. I had nothing when I walked out. I had nowhere to go, nobody to call, nothing. It was still locked up. I had no family, no friends. I mean, when I say I had nothing, I had nothing except a cup of coffee. And that's something that really needs to be looked at. Immediate needs need to be met if you're going to put any effort into recovery. Because, like Joe said, you're more comfortable being miserable on the street. So why put in the effort if there is, if there's nothing to put in the effort for? A lot of people don't have basic skills. People don't know how to boil water. There are things that some people need to learn, and that needs to be taken into consideration in the aftercare part of things.
I would say if people really struggle, I myself struggled with understanding that this was a disease because our symptoms are our behaviors. And I didn't like my behavior. I don't even like me. Looking back on that moment, I don't even know who that was. But at the same time, Joe is exactly right. We need alternatives. And sending someone to jail is appropriate sometimes. I agree. Definitely was my rock bottom. I don't ever want to see that again. But at the same time, it's just a time that we take a break from using drugs sometimes. And we just sit in there and then we come out and we use again. So during that time, something else needs to happen, some sort of treatment, and 100% accountability. For me, that's what needs to happen in my life. And I would guess everybody here would agree with that. But we don't have that right now. They just come out and start again, sometimes.
So we have time for one more question. Dara?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My question is kind of twofold, and it's probably longer than a 10-minute answer or 5-minute answer, but I just spent the day on Friday at Canton High School talking to the high schoolers. And one of the things that I think was resonated with me was coping skills. How can we teach, like if you were to look back at your younger self, and because a lot of it is coping, right? I don't want to deal with reality, so I'm going to do this type of thing. What would you say to yourself, and how do you think we can do better programming for the students in the high school to teach them better coping skills?
Well, being an educator over here, I would say that 100% reaching out. Kids don't want to reach out because they're not sure of the consequences. And so having that open line of communication with whoever, whether it be a counselor, their parents, someone that they can trust. The mentoring system.
As a student-friendly kids, there were visibly children telling me different stuff in the afternoon. And I'm like, oh yeah, how do you do this?
I have an idea. I'm not an educator, but I am a social worker. I was sitting with my cousin's children who attend John Glenn, and both of them are daily approached with all kinds of drug choices in their high school. And they're a sibling set that they support one another, right? But
I think the answer is getting the young people that have found a way to not use, to talk to them. The other thing is confidentiality.
Yes, I work
Yeah.
in Lent too.
Confidentiality, like, so social workers, I know for a fact, are split so thin in the school districts that they can't even do their jobs, right? Because they're covering so many schools, but maybe counselors, she would know more about that. Specific teachers that could be identified as a safe haven, where if a student goes and says, this is going on in my home and I don't know what to do, right? That, I don't know how that could be created, but I think that's part of the solution, right? Instead of pretending like it's not happening.
I think every adult knows that the main thing kids need is consistency. And I think when I was a kid, I had a lot of people coming to my high school and middle school preaching about drugs. Nobody was listening. They didn't listen to me when I had issues. It was, oh, go do this, go do that. You know, nobody wanted to take the time out of their day to sit and actually listen to my concerns. And these kids today, let's just be realistic, with social media and the internet and the way society is, they see more at 10 years old than I did by the time I was 18. And we're only talking about one generation ago. So these kids are dealing with way more stress than we did, and it's more in their face. These kids, my daughter could probably figure out how to have drugs sent to my home from her phone. That's the reality. So we need to start listening to kids and being consistent to them. Nobody, you know, and it's got to be hard. Like I said about the judges and lawyers, I don't know how you guys do your job. I don't know how you go into our kids go to camp, and that school specifically is very there's a lot of drugs. There are. So I think you would have to, you know, listen to their concerns. Why are you choosing to do this instead of doing right? And it's like everything else, just like the legal system. There needs to be alternatives. So I think things like that start in rooms like this. I love this program. You bring so many diverse people together, you know, and I don't think there's a way to fix that issue or any other issue we've talked about overnight. But we can get there. We can.
This is a fun topic for me. Most parents don't like my ideas on parenting because I'm sort of quite different, but what I guess I can narrow it down to say is adults operate under the assumption too often that it's our job to control kids. It's not our job to control kids. It's our job to guide them, to teach them, and to be allies to them. And that is a message that they need to hear before they're going to open up to anybody. They need to be able to know that you're going to be an ally. And that can happen in so many different ways. Just I hear you. How you doing today consistently? That is going to open the doors for them to come and tell you. And not that every kid is the same, but this is the approach that I have with my second troublesome son. The middle child's always the one that gives you the most gray hairs, right? He definitely does. But you know what? He doesn't hesitate to talk to me about drugs. He even shares with me the things that he wants to try someday. So we have realistic conversations. It's going to happen. He's going to, at some point, be exposed, and he's going to get curious, and he's going to probably try these things. So I operate under a sort of harm reduction minimization type of thing, where like it's kind of manipulation in a way. He wants to try marijuana. I don't smoke. It's